All right, welcome everybody to today's online chess lesson. Hopefully you've been practicing playing some games through the week and using some of the strategies that we talk about each session in our lessons here. What we're going to be doing today is a 4-move checkmate. Now this is one of the most common tricks or traps that people try on people, on inexperienced players, and you need to know not just how to do it so that you can surprise people who are inexperienced, but also how to block it just in case somebody tries that on you. And there are a couple of variations on that one as well. The first thing you need to know before you know anything about a 4-move checkmate is actually how to do a 2-move checkmate, because the 4-move checkmate is all about a strategy which focuses around one part of the chessboard called the weak spot. Now, if anyone's heard about the weak spot before, you feel free to type your answers into the questions box, and we'll try and get one of the coaches who's on the line with us to respond to as many of those chat questions as possible. So the first question is, where is your weak spot? All right, pretend you're white here in this initial position. We're here just about to start a game of chess. You see your opponent sitting down there at the other end of the battlefield. Obviously you're aiming, or your focus is on trying to get your opponent's king. But before you can get to your opponent's king, they've got all of their strong pieces next to the king, and in front of all of those strong pieces they've got a big long line of pawns. And all those pawns are your defensive pieces. They're like the wall that surrounds the king's castle. So if we want to try and smash through that wall, we want to try and break through and get to the king, which of those pawns would you like to attack first? So where are we going to aim our attack so that we can break through and get to the king as quickly as possible? All right, any suggestions at all? Like, what is the easiest way to break through Black's big long line of defense, all those pawns, and actually get in and attack those good pieces that are hiding behind the pawns? Well, the answer is the weak spot. And the weak spot is the square that is one step diagonal from the king. So the square that I've highlighted here, F7 for black, and also white has a weak spot. That would be F2 for white. The square that's highlighted is the weak spot because it is protected only by the king. Now black's got nothing else that covers that pawn. All right, so that's going to be the easiest place to attack and to break through. Okay, the square F7 or F2. I'll see if try and get that square highlighting for you. There we go. That's working now. So the F7 square for black or the F2 square for white are the easiest places to try and break through because they're only protected by the king and nothing else. All right, so if we want to try and attack there, it's covered only by king. That's the weakest of all the pieces, so that's where you should be aiming for at the start. All right, so knowing that that's the weak spot, let's have a look at the worst possible move that you could play if you were white. Now, this is a bit strange. Normally we try and teach you the best moves, but sometimes to know the best moves, you also have to see what the worst moves are so you know what not to do. All right, the worst possible move that you could play is moving your pawn forwards from F2 on its first move. All right, now, not many people are going to be playing that move, not unless you're really inexperienced, you're a real beginner, because that move there opens up your weak spot. So the square next to the king that used to have one pawn at least protecting it now has nothing at all. So you're completely open. All right, so let's say you do that. Black plays a strong move, advancing his pawn towards the middle of the board, which is the strongest part of the board. And the second move that white plays is advancing the pawn to G4. Okay, when you do that, you've now got these pawns that were sheltering the king, all right, all the way across like a wall, and it's just sort of opened a door and let your opponent's queen come in to do a checkmate. All right, so the next move that black would play, queen out to H4, attacking the king straight down past the weak spot, and now king can't. You can't take the queen, you can't block it off, you can't put anything in the way to block it, and the king can't move anywhere because he's blocked in by his own pieces. And there we have a checkmate in just 2 moves. All right. Now, that's the quickest possible game of chess. All right. It is possible to get a game of chess that finishes in 2 moves, but like you see in this game, White really had to help in that one. White had to play the 2 worst possible moves to end up with a checkmate like that. All right, so when we go back to the start, we know where our weak spot is now. We've seen what happens when you move your pawn away from the weak spot. Now we want to know about what a 4-move checkmate is. Well, 4-move checkmate, let's show you what that 4-move checkmate looks like just from White's point of view. Okay, so just from White's point of view, we're going to start off with the bishop. The pawn, controlling the center of the board. Black copies. The bishop now moves out, and the bishop is starting an attack down towards the weak spot. Nothing, Black shouldn't panic yet, nothing to really worry about just yet, because at the moment the bishop's attacking the weak spot, but the king's protecting it. So it's sort of an even balance at the moment. And Black's got, there's lots of other possibilities that White could be trying. He could just be going for a normal Italian opening or a bishop's opening or something like that. So it's not necessarily that he's going to be doing a 4-move checkmate just because he's put his bishop there. All right? But he is attacking for the weak spot, so that gives you a little bit of a clue. Let's say that Black just copies, does the same thing. All right? Both of them good moves. We're developing bishops. We're controlling the middle of the board. We're in good positions. No problems there. White now plays queen out to h5, all right, and is pointing down towards Black's weak spot again. Once the queen comes out, that's when you need to start getting worried, all right, because your opponent's queen, that's their strongest, most powerful piece. So if you're Black here and your opponent's queen comes out, you know, they're probably not coming to have afternoon tea with you. They probably don't have a set of muffins hidden in their bag. You know, it's more likely that they're coming out to try and kill you. They're trying to get you in checkmate. All right? So as soon as the queen comes out and starts attacking you, you've got to think to yourself, warning, warning, what's going on? And if you notice the queen's attacking your weak spot, you realize that the bishop's also coming down towards the weak spot, so you're getting attacked on the weak spot from 2 directions. There's going to be a checkmate coming next move unless you can stop it. All right, so here we need to start thinking about ways, what could Black do here to try and block this checkmate? How's he going to stop it? All right, because if you just do a common move that a lot of people might think this is a good move, we'll move the knight here, we'll attack that queen, right? Queen's in danger, yeah, he's going to have to retreat. Not true at all. Knight comes out and attacks the queen. The queen's just going to come in behind the knight, protected by the pawn, protected by the bishop, taking that pawn, and there we have a checkmate. All right, queen's now on the weak spot, backed up by the bishop. There's a checkmate. All right, so let's go back there. Attacking the queen's not going to do it. What can we do? If you know the answer, you can type that into your chat box, and you can try and make a suggestion for what move Black could do here to block the checkmate. All right, Chris has suggested advancing the pawn forwards to block the checkmate. Well, that does, doesn't it? That stops the queen from coming through and taking the pawn. Right? The queen can't take the weak spot anymore, and also the pawn's attacking the queen. So it does seem like a good way. It does seem like a good way of stopping that 4-move checkmate. The one thing that does is that it opens up some squares in and around your king side. Whenever you move a pawn forwards, that's moving the wall of defense forwards a little bit, opens things up, makes it easier for White to come in and sort of attack behind those pawns. So, a couple of people have suggested the move. They can see that next move that's coming up. The queen's in danger, it's got to move out of the way, and so the queen comes across to e5, takes the pawn, and puts Black's king in check. Not only is it check, but the queen's also now pointing down towards the corner of the board and attacking the rook in the corner. So this is what we call a fork, where the queen's attacking 2 pieces at the same time. All right, Black's in check, it's got to get out of check, so puts his knight in the way to block it off. Queen takes the rook. Not quite checkmate, because you can't take the queen, you can't move the king, but you can block it off again. Then the queen will take the knight check, bishop blocks it off again, and then there'll still be a checkmate. Now, what I want you to see here is that even though this has been 7 moves, this is still a 4-move checkmate. And you really have to try and understand that the 4-move checkmate is a strategy. Right? It's not a move. Okay? It's a strategy. It's the strategy of getting your queen onto the weak spot, protected by something, protected by a bishop, by a knight, by a pawn. Doesn't matter what it's protected by. If you can get your queen onto the weak spot, which is right next to diagonal to the king, and it's protected by something, that's going to be checkmate. And you can do that any number of ways. You can invent your own 4-move checkmate. You can invent a 4-move checkmate that takes 16 moves. All right? It doesn't matter how many moves it takes. So here we have a 4-move checkmate which has taken 7 moves. All right? Queen's ended up on the weak spot. It's protected by the bishop. There's a checkmate. So when we take a few steps back, we say, well, actually, maybe moving that pawn forwards here to attack the queen wasn't such a good move, because it opens up a way for the queen to come in behind all of the pawns and still end up with a checkmate. All right? So let's go back one step from there and go back to the time where black's now in danger. His pawn's being attacked. The queen's attacking the weak spot. Let's find some other suggestions from people as to what black would do to stop this checkmate. And I'm going to take Sam's suggestion next, which was to move the knight to h6. All right? Now that's not a bad suggestion there, because the knight is protecting the weak spot. So if the queen continues on the path, the plan which was to go for the 4-move checkmate, that's not 4-move checkmate now, because after the queen takes the pawn on the weak spot, black's knight is just waiting there to take him. All right, so that's definitely going to be a way of preventing the 4-move checkmate. But is it the best way? Well, let's have a think about what white can do, because one of the problems with putting your knight onto the edge of the board is that it's only half as powerful as had you moved it towards the center of the board. All right? It's only half as powerful. A knight in the middle of the board, let's say we take that one back and we move our knight towards f6. A knight in the middle of the board can attack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares all the way around. So the knight's really powerful. It's attacking all the way around in left, right, forwards, backwards in 8 different squares. When you put the knight onto the edge of the board, the knight now only covers 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. The rest of the power of the knight is actually wasted. It's being pushed off to the edge of the board. So that knight's not going to be very powerful, and white has got a way of easily getting rid of that knight and still doing a 4-move checkmate. So the next move that white plays, advancing his pawn towards the center of the board. Okay, 2 pawns next to each other and threatening the bishop. So of course black doesn't have much choice. He's got to get his bishop safe, and he figures, well, I'll just take that pawn that gets my bishop safe and gets a free pawn. Then white uses his bishop to zoom out and take the knight. So when the pawn takes the bishop back, we've got the weak spot now unprotected. The knight's gone, and the queen can come down, take the weak spot, protected by the bishop, and there we have 4-move checkmate. Okay, happened in 6 moves this time, but it's still a 4-move checkmate. The strategy is get your queen onto the weak spot, backed up by the bishop. That's the 4-move checkmate strategy. All right, so we're not memorizing moves here. We're trying to get this picture, this pattern in our mind. Oh, cool, if we can get the queen to the weak spot, protected by something, that's going to be a checkmate. All right, so we'll go back a couple of steps again, and we'll go back to where the knight came out and protected the weak spot. So that seemed like a good plan. It does protect the weak spot, but it doesn't protect the weak spot for all that long. It's too easy to be taken. All right, let's go back another step, and let's go for another suggestion. All right, so another suggestion that was made, a couple of people have suggested to move the king. All right, well, if you move your king sideways, it's still checkmate anyway. All right, queen's on the weak spot, protected by the bishop, that's checkmate. King can't take it, can't block, can't move away. If you move your king forwards, then while it's not checkmate next move, this is looking pretty bad because after the check, your king has to come right out into the open. All right, and if your king's way out there in the open, it's going to get attacked from all directions, and this game is going to be checkmate in probably just a few more moves. All right, you really don't want your king out in the open there. Okay, so let's go back again and say, well, we prefer not to move the king. Now, I always say to people that chess is a very logical game. All right, it's a very simple game when you really get down and think about it. Very simple. All right, white's attacking with the queen. You tried blocking with a pawn, and it didn't work. You tried blocking with a knight, and it didn't work. Well, there's no surprises there. A queen is much more powerful than a knight. A queen's much more powerful than a pawn. So queen attacks, pawn blocks, no wonder it didn't work. In order to block a queen, you probably need to use a queen, something that's the same strength. All right? So well done to the few people who suggested the correct move. When you're faced with a 4-move checkmate, the queen's attacking you, you need to defend with your queen. So we just put the queen forwards one step, and now the queen is protecting the weak spot. All right? Really simple. Queen attacks, queen defends. All right? So we've got the attacking piece, and then we've got the defending piece. All right? And because they're the same strength, makes it very easy. Okay? Now if white tries to continue with his plan of taking the weak spot, black takes the queen, so it's a queen for queen trade. But after that queen for queen trade, white loses the bishop, and you can see now that black is a bishop ahead and easily winning this game. All right? His king's a little bit open, but white doesn't have a queen to attack it with. White doesn't have any of his good pieces off the back row. So no problems at all for white there. Black's easily going to win this game. All right, so let's go back a step to here. We see now that the 4-move checkmate has been blocked. Completely safe now once the queen is protecting your weak spot. Okay, so we've got our queen protecting the weak spot. So that's the best way of defending. And in fact, if you're white here and you try a 4-move checkmate, when your opponent blocks it, you're actually in a bit of trouble because now your queen is out in the open. So you might think, oh, I've got to get my pieces developed and keep attacking. But every time that you move something, you're going to find that black's going to come up and threaten your queen. Right? Wherever you move, your queen is always going to be in a bit of danger from here on. You can move your queen somewhere, right? And very soon your queen's going to be in even more danger. Right? The knight can move into the attack, your castle, pawn can move forwards, and your queen's in danger again. So having your queen out in the open is going to mean that your queen's going to get chased around and attacked an awful lot. So in actual fact, after we get to that position where black's blocked the 4-move checkmate, white's in a bad position. So the 4-move checkmate is a strategy, remember that. It's a strategy that you should use only against someone who's a very inexperienced player. Right? If your opponent's a good player and they know how to block it, if you've gone for the 4-move checkmate, you're actually going to end up in a pretty bad situation. Right? Your queen's going to be out in the open, taking a bit of a risk, and you're going to be, you might even lose your queen. You're certainly going to be wasting a bit of time retreating your queen and getting your queen safe again. All right, so I don't recommend that you go for a 4-move checkmate against a really experienced player. And of course, everybody who's on the line now and everyone who watches this recording later on is now going to be counted as an experienced player because once you've seen this, you should never fall for it again. What I do want to show you now is just to stress that the strategy of the 4-move checkmate can be done in lots of different ways. All right, so there was a girl that I was teaching in grade 1 at Wesley College in Melbourne. Her name was Charmaine. And I was incredibly impressed because after I showed her the 4-move checkmate strategy, I said, this is a strategy. Okay, all you need to do is get your queen onto the weak spot, protected by something, and you've got your checkmate. How you do it doesn't matter. It could take 4 moves, 8 moves, 10 moves. It's still a 4-move checkmate if you use the same strategy. It's the strategy that we're aiming for. So she listened to that. She obviously saw that strategy, and she invented her own 4-move checkmate. And I'm going to show you this game that she played that day after I talked to her about the 4-move checkmate. Remember, this girl is in grade 1. This was amazing. She was very impressive moves that she played from here. All right, so she started off advancing her pawn to control the center of the board. All right, black responded the way that we were expecting. Bishop came into the attack, and black copied bishop into the attack. Now, of course, this is all as expected, as planned. Now, the interesting move that Charmaine tried now when she was white, she moved her queen not all the way out to go for the weak spot, but just one step forwards, protecting her own weak spot. She's developed her queen, right? She's protecting the weak spot, and there's, of course, no expectation. Black's not thinking, oh, there's going to be a 4-move checkmate. There's not going to be a 4-move checkmate. Black's not scared at all here. Black's not thinking there's going to be a 4-move checkmate at all. In fact, it looks like white's playing the defense to the 4-move checkmate. So black just keeps on developing a piece. Well, that's a good move. And then Charmaine retreated her bishop. Okay, retreating the bishop. Looks like she's playing a defensive game. Black developed the knight, and Charmaine now moved her queen onto c4. All right. Putting the queen on c4 makes it look like she's attacking the bishop. Right? Makes it look like she's attacking this bishop here on c5, attacking with the queen. Makes it look like her queen is somewhere on the left-hand side of the board, far away from black's weak spot. Right? But the weak spot, nonetheless, is in danger from the queen. And this is what I thought was so genius about her plan, was that she knew she wanted to get her queen onto the weak spot, protected by something, because that was going to make it a checkmate. So she moved her queen in the complete opposite direction, threw her opponent off. Her opponent thought, oh, my bishop's in trouble, retreated the bishop, and then the queen zoomed down onto the weak spot, was protected, and she was able to say checkmate. Took her 6 moves, but it's still a 4-move checkmate. All right, so your challenge is to be able to invent your own 4-move checkmate. All right, because there are lots of different ways of doing it. You don't have to do it in 4 moves. You could do it in 6 moves, 8 moves, 10 moves, 20 moves. All right, so 4-move checkmate as a strategy. All right, quite a simple strategy. What I'd like you guys to do is we'll get out and play some games, do some practicing, and make sure that you never fall for that 4-move checkmate, that you always keep your weak spot protected. All right, so that's our lesson for today. I'm going to be hanging around here answering some questions for another 6 or 7 minutes. So if you guys have got any questions that you'd like to answer, jump online, type those questions into your chat box, and I'll see if I can get to answer as many questions as possible. I might also show you guys a couple of ideas about weak spots later in the game another week, because weak spots do occur not just in the first few moves of the game, but the weak spot can actually play a part of the game for the entire game, even through sometimes into an end game. All right, so thanks for being part of today's lesson,